I don't play many turn-based RPGs. I've played a little Persona 5 because I think it looks really pretty. I've given Pokemon a couple of tries, but I usually get bored rather quickly, and I haven't played a third example, to humorously hammer home the point of my pitiful RPG playtime. Turn-based role-playing games never grab me in a way that makes me want to experience the whole thing. Typically, the gameplay, specifically combat, is a little bit slow to my usual liking, which is usually the only part of the game that directly gives me serotonin, so I end up skipping the mountains of dialogue needed to get to the combat, making me care less about the characters. And if I don't care for the gameplay or the world, what little that's going to grab me is the visuals or music, and even they have a strenuous grasp on my ADHD-riddled brain. I've wanted to dip my foot into turn-based RPGs a bit more, but had come to the conclusion that they're just simply not for me, until one game proved me wrong, and showed that there is one thing in an RPG that will grab my attention, make me want to learn about the lore, master mechanics, and care for the characters. It just has to be funny. In 2003, while I was busy being 1 year old and avoiding taxes, Zach Johnson and his small crackpot team of developers created Kingdom of Loathing, a free in-browser turn-based online MMORPG. Kingdom of Loathing touted a very simple art style, obviously looking like something Zach probably just drew on a napkin, a just as simple gameplay loop of killing monsters for experience, and the far less simple writing. This game is chock full of tongue-in-cheek gags, wordplay, surrealism, parodies, and entendres in the double and triple varieties. That wasn't to say Kingdom of Loathing was bare bones or lacking in gameplay. It had a good amount going for it in that department and still gets updates over 20 years later. But be honest, if you booted this game up, it wasn't for the super in-depth gameplay that could reliably squeeze fun out of for hours on end. It was for the really funny dialogue. Fast forward a few years, and by a few I mean 14, and Zach Johnson, with the help of his new game studio Asymmetric Publications, creates a spin-off to Kingdom of Loathing called West of Loathing, this time scaling back from a free-to-play browser MMO to a fully fledged single-player role-playing game, released on Steam and even later on the Nintendo Switch. West of Loathing took what worked in Kingdom of Loathing and built on it, fleshing out the combat a bit more and giving a little more focus on the story. It still retained all the little details that made it a Loathing game, such as the stick figure art style and the meat currency, but pushed to be a more fuller and fun experience, which can be reflected in the reception. Thousands of positive reviews, multiple YouTube playthroughs getting millions of views in of themselves, and according to SteamDB, an estimated 300,000 large player base. West of Loathing is without a doubt one of my favorite games of all time, and it's purely off of the charm and writing alone. So today, instead of looking at that game, we'll be looking at its 2022 sequel, obviously, Shadows Over Loathing, which follows the trend by taking what worked in the last one and improving small things here and there, but still retaining a lot of the core DNA, which is the humor. Starting the game, we find our face covered by a magazine, regular Thursday morning activities. We enter a nearby diner and go to the bathroom to pick a face, and I try to pick one that's as accurate as possible to my real face. Please don't make fun of me. Striking up conversations with the other diner patrons will shine a light on what the writing is like, which is just as surreal but consistent as I'd hope it'd be. Dialogue is full of silly little gags and puns, but is all still written strongly enough to keep you engaged, leading to you wanting to talk to more characters because who knows what silly sentences will be served up to you next. Approaching Ethel, the diner lady, every diner has an Ethel, we get asked for her name. Well, I can't name myself, that's too much responsibility. Lloyd and Max are pretty good, but Kreisel? Nothing beats Kreisel. And when I'm asked for my last name, like I said, nothing beats Kreisel. I tell her that my Uncle Murray, everyone has an Uncle Murray, has asked me to help him in Ocean City, and after I decide Ethel doesn't need to know anymore, I get my first perk, Guarded. It's an excuse to occasionally be a hard-ass to NPCs. Shadows Over Loathing has perks like most RPGs, usually giving you small stat boosts in combat, while also providing brand new dialogue options that are usually pretty funny. I catch a bus to Ocean City, but it breaks down after only a few miles. The bus driver needs us to fill up the gas can to continue, and here's what the bulk of Shadows quests look like. Simple sounding fetch quests that seem easy or boring on the surface, such as fill a gas can at the local gas station, become genuinely engaging through the tight writing that makes you want to check every nook and cranny for the solution, or at the very least, a funny little exchange. I go into the gas station and blatantly lie to the narrator about being an employee here so I can go into the back, find a fuse to power up the garage, and find some gas in the car's cup holder, but it only fills 1/3 of my canister. I'm American. I can only measure in cups and thirds. Outside, we talked to a lonely girl named Lydia. We talked about books I've never heard of, movies I've never seen, and how she doesn't notice the rain somehow. We're gonna be best friends fast, I can tell. I'll tell her about my fear of ghosts when I walk back this way. We then come across Farmer Chekhov and his gun. No relation. And he tells us about a dust devil in his house, so we square up for our first combat encounter. Now, I may have underestimated everything in my life because I die in 2 turns, but who's to say if it was the dust or the devil that killed me? Asthma probably exists in this universe. Who says Kreisel doesn't have it? Talking to Chekhov some more, and he tells us there's some gas he can spare out in his barn. We just gotta take care of the robot his daughter built before she left. He says it isn't supposed to be dangerous, but I blame the daughter for creating a robot capable of causing harm in the first place. Combat in this game is simple. You can attack and you can use skills. Skills cost AP points and either buff you, debuff enemies, or deal with direct damage, and the robot fight is probably already over. Yeah, like I said, it's super simple, but the challenge comes from the number of enemies, or more beefed up enemies later down the line. Doesn't help I have a short attention span and the set battle speed is 200%. After stealing a gun off a clothesline, there's sadly not much else for me to do around the farm as my stats are too low. In Shadows, you have 3 basic stats that determine most of the speech and world checks. Muscle, Moxie, and Mysticality. Not only being humorous replacements for the usual strength, charisma, and wisdom, they're used in broader ways than the typical RPG skill check would have you use them. I do, however, have enough skills to beat this scarecrow and scrounge up the last third of gas I need to fill up the tank. But I'm an overachiever, so I'll keep looking for more gas. I also net enough XP to pick skill that lets me juice up my brain. I save a turtle and come across a hobo named Howie, who gives me a bit more gas and tells me about a railroad bull near his train cart that's guarding some more. Well, I won't let some police officer stop me. Oh, he meant a literal bull. Well, nothing a nice baseball bat and some well-timed rock throws can't handle. And after grabbing the gas he was guarding, plus some in the fridge over here, I'm up to 200% full gas canister. About time I head back to the bus, and I'll go tell Lydia about all my adventures. Huh. A historic site of the first death of a hitchhiker. A girl named Lydia Barnsley. I grab the turtle and I'm never looking back. I arrive in Ocean City and find my uncle's antique store, where my uncle is missing. Everyone has a missing Uncle Murray. I find his assistant Jessica, who reveals that my uncle is actually an adventurer who travels the world hunting cursed artifacts and uses the antique shop as a front. Before his latest adventure, he told Jessica to contact me if he never came back, so I'm basically my uncle's last hope. Before I can even unpack and process this world-shattering information, Jessica sends me on a mission to find a cursed fedora, and asks Gabby the Goblin to accompany me. Gabby is your first companion in the game, and she immediately makes me wish for someone else when one of the first things she says is an insult to how humans make babies. I will have you know, I have 0 experience in that department and wish to keep it that way, so you're on thin ice for trying to explain it to me, Gabby. I begrudgingly take her to the rundown newspaper office, and after a series of puzzles, including but not limited to reading notes left behind on desks, I find a hidden passage that leads to a tunnel and these guys. These are fishmen. Okay, buddies, I just had to deal with a literal devil, a robot, a scarecrow, and a bull. I think I'm done fighting for today. Thank you. With the fishman taken care of, I secure the hat, and by grabbing the hat, I realize I had 20/20 vision all along and can find more items. I take the hat back to Jessica, and she tells us that we need to uncurse it, which takes us to a new gameplay segment compared to previous Loathing games, the uncursing machine. By taking cursed objects back to Jessica, we can uncurse them by entering a strange dream world that has you play out a tangentially related scenario, and solving the problem within will remove the curse and give you a new item to use. For the Fedora dream, I'm a lumberjack who has to solve a murder mystery in a forest of talking trees. After talking to the only 3 trees in the area, the culprit is revealed to be the first one we talk to, and says his plan is to wait 100 years to be so big that I can't cut him down. Unfortunately for him, I can cut him down now just fine. Killing the killer fixes the curse and teaches me a very valuable life lesson, a lesson so valuable that I go to my room and my luggage catches on fire. I feel like this is the universe trying to tell me I did something wrong, but I'm perfect, so it can't be that. Well, I had a traumatic run with a ghost, my uncle went missing, and most of my valued possessions are ashes in the bottom of a suitcase, but I can at least get some respite in my sleep. Oh, come on. One more new segment. The Dream segment. These are bookends for each of the chapters of the games and usually unveil some amount of the wider story going on. Shadows Over Loathing's strength over the other Loathing titles is a bit more of a focus on a central story. This stream specifically is used to pick our class, our options being Pig Skinner, Cheese Wizard, or Jazz Agent. Now, I need to be upfront and honest with every single one of you watching. I do not want to skin pigs. Okay? Okay, so I pick Jazz Agent because that sounds cool as hell. I also pick another perk, that being Psychogeology, letting me use my advanced intellect to communicate to rocks. Honestly, the situation comes up more than you'd expect. And then I wake up, empowered by my new mission to find my uncle. I really don't want to be known as the missing uncle guy when my time in Ocean City is over. Jessica tells us our burnt suitcase isn't important because we have a new cursed item to find, a pocket watch in the nearby speakeasy, which I had to Google is just an illegal bar from the 1930s because I don't speak easy. As soon as we exit the antique store, we finish the prologue and are on to Chapter 1. I head into the speakeasy and meet Fancy Dan the cocktail man. He tells us that the owner of the bar probably has the pocket watch we're looking for, but that he's at the nearby fridge factory. But before I head out, I take a moment to enjoy the music of the speakeasy, which lets me segue seamlessly into saying I love the music of this game. The silly little themes that play for certain actions, the different background songs that follow you around, and it's got enough range to go from silly and whimsical to ethereal cosmic horror. The entire soundtrack was made by Ryan Ike, and he has the entire thing on his YouTube channel. If nothing else, go listen to the full main theme. It's so good. Arriving at the fridge factory, and we're halted by a group of gangsters who tells us we need to cough up 500 meat if we want inside. They tell me I can make the money by working at Goldthwaite Park, and after a brief negotiation session that involved blowing myself up with cola grenades, I'm inclined to agree with them on going to the park. I lie to the manager at the park and weasel my way into doing several odd jobs for him. I fight some crickets, convince a hobo to leave, deal with some weeds, and use all my brain cells to make the fountain work. Look, rocks I can talk to easily. Water, it's a bit more stubborn. After another failed attempt with the cola grenades, I level up my moxie and renegotiate without the grenades to only pay 300 meat to enter. Those suckers. I would have settled for 301 meat if they asked. Inside the factory, I eavesdrop in on Oliver's conversation, and I am not paid nearly enough to handle whatever is about to transpire. And neither was Oliver. I try to reason with the hack guy, but he seems to not like me, which makes me mad since everyone should like me, especially people with hats. So I call upon the gangsters to help me fight what was once Oliver, and as it turns out, even shadowy possessed people are susceptible to bullets. After he's turned into a puddle, I fish out the pocket watch and the deed to the speakeasy, which I was just about to take to Fancy Dan to find out what poor soul owns it now, when I get distracted by music on the other side of the city. Yeah, of course I'm gonna investigate the house, it's weird and creepy. In the attic is a guy playing a cello, saying it's the only thing that'll keep evil goo in his basement from consuming the whole world. Now, given I have so far had altercations with ghosts, fishmen, and literal shadow demons, I'm inclined to assume that he's wrong and stupid. I go down there and it turns out it's just a bunch of tar that leaked from a bucket, and for good measure, I fish inside of the puddle. We tell the guy he can stop playing his cello, and maybe I should stop making assumptions. Going back to the basement reveals an actual rift in space only a few feet away from the tar puddle, so easy mistake on my part, and the best course of action is to just jump right in. Inside is this weird guy who's bothered by all of his lines shaking about, so I hold them still for him. Then I hold him still and rip a crystal out of him. I really contemplated taking the crystal back with me into the real world, but I realized I'm not a crystal guy, so I smash it into dust. Then I contemplate snorting it, but then I realize I'm not that kind of crystal guy either. Taking the deed to Fancy Dan, and he tells me I'm the poor soul who owns the speakeasy, so I put in some free advertising by renaming it to the Purple Door. Before I uncurse the pocket watch, I have unfinished business with the surplus store and the exploding pop I was given, so I'm compensated with a nifty gas mask, which I then use to help me kill a grunt from a whole different gang called the 10 Lizzies and steal her gross gun. Entering the pocket watch curse, the dream involves me becoming a dinosaur and slowly upping my dexterity by flipping over chairs and writing on papers. Also, I can open a door that leads to this old guy who probably symbolizes something really profound, but I'm just gonna act like this has been a really roundabout Doctor Who reference because I know for a fact there were dinosaurs in that show. Before I go to sleep, I decide I should finish taking care of the 10 Lizzies. I forcefully sneak my way into the camp, which is just a very fancy way of saying I beat them all up, and in a cunning ruse I become their king. I use my new kingly role to obtain a chopped off car door in the respect of the Lizzies. Well, what few Lizzies there are after my massacre. I'll quickly lightning round the last few things I did that day. I found a guy sitting on a mailbox who wanted a snack cake, found another hobo, and now have the goal of befriending as many hobos as I can. Fought a bunch of bakers to get said snack cake and traded to become an expert at sitting down. Then finally I found a whole camp of hobos and began learning their language. Given enough time and resources, I will have both the 10 Lizzies and the hobos at my beck and call. Before I cap off my second day in Ocean City, I get to decide on a new store to open on our street. This is a choice you're given at the end of every day from now on, and you can't go back and change it, so it's best to pick stores that sell things you'll actually need. Seeing as I'm a jazz agent, I decide the best thing I need is pants. Off to bed, and I get another strange, non-curse related dream. All the usual tropes for a dream ensue. My recent traumatic experiences haunt me, my teeth fall out, my old school bully is a jerk, and the strange hat man starts speaking to me. His name is Poindexter. He has a confusing hat and wants to tell the president about me. Finally, someone recognizes how cool I am. He ends the conversation by calling me a complication and jumps into the abyss. I know the word complication has never been used to describe someone in a positive way, but he's going to tell the president about me, and that guy is cool and old, so it means he can't hate me. And wouldn't you know it, another mysterious man in a hat is by me when I wake up. This is just getting too good. He tells me his name is Don, and he works for another mob that's in Ocean City, and has asked me to do dirty work for his gang, which I, of course, take the offer. Listen, I need to get a good deal in with the mob. What if they want to give me one of their hats? Jessica then informs me that the next artifact is a compass that's located near a lighthouse at Crystal Dream Lake. She gives us a bus pass, and with it in hand, we now have access to brand new locations and all the random encounters they have. But before I head to the lake, I find that the mob I just promised to help has sent me a new companion, Molly Buttons. By the fact that she doesn't question where babies come from, and she owns a Tommy gun, this makes the choice of companion a no-brainer. Come on, Molly, it's time to hit the lake. Arriving at the lake, and the lighthouse keeper tells us the compass is inside the lighthouse, but we can't get in because it's flooded. Makes sense, the ocean is clearly rebelling and wants more ships to crash. So we go on this long fetch quest to get a special valve to fix his pump. The hardware store is out of valve, so we head off to the dam and find a doorway that leads to the past. Specifically, back to when the dam was being constructed. This really hungry guy won't let us by to look for a spare valve. I feed him all the food I have on me, but it's not enough, so I try to beat him up. I realize my mistake again. I really shouldn't try to fight people on an almost full stomach, so I go and buy him some sardines that fill him up. Sorry that we couldn't get you your sandwich. I grab the valve, go back to the lighthouse and pump it empty, and I find out that the keeper is a bitch. He says he won't give me the compass unless I bring him back one that's as old as it is so I can replace it. Something about new compasses not using the right north. Listen buddy, I talk to rocks, I don't need to know about your nerd compass explanation. He gives us a Geiger counter to find an old irradiated compass, and I make my way into the junkyard cave. Keen-eyed viewers will notice something in the cave that I really didn't. But that's for later. Until then, I find a spot where the compass is buried, but I realize I don't have a shovel. I've been walking on my hands lately, so I can't just dig it up with those, so I obviously need to do some kind of puzzle or something to obtain the shovel, right? Well, I spend over 30 minutes running around the lake doing random odd jobs. I run around an old mine shaft, find an old abandoned town and flush some toilets, heckle the shop lady. Hell, I exterminate a whole horde of vampires on my quest to dig one hole, which probably makes me seem even more like a lunatic to everyone in the lake area. Just give me a small trowel and I will stop the massacre, please. So after almost giving up, I head back to the cave to see if I missed anything. What I missed was a shovel sitting right here in the first room of the cave. I was about to blame the game for having some sort of harebrained puzzle I couldn't solve. I even went back as far as going to Ocean City to buy this spork, thinking it could be used as a shovel, but no, I'm just an idiot. I dig it up, swap it with the keeper, and uncurse the cursed one by playing mentally scarring baseball. I also get a call from the mob boss telling me I did a good job taking care of those vampires, which means I didn't screw up by being oblivious, further proving I can do no wrong in this universe. In my dreams, I put the teeth from earlier into a skull and eavesdrop yet again on a conversation from Poindexter and the president. Turns out, it's a woman. My mistake, I thought we were still on Lincoln. I wake up from what I think is the shortest dream in the game and get my next location. A college where there's a cursed book. Look, I normally write these scripts in the order of how it happened in game and talk about all the fun bits that happened in between, but I can promise you the college is the most boring part of the game, so we're just gonna be quick with this. The location isn't fun. To get the book, you need to complete a handful of really tedious chores, including killing a bunch of spiders over and over, killing some plants where I got the school little dog, and trying to find constellations, but the game literally does not tell you how to find them all unless you go get a hint. Okay, I'm gonna rant. This part really frustrated me. You're told to talk to this guy if you need help for any of the tasks. So I assumed it was a hint guy, like you didn't need him if you were smart enough, since he only gives hint for the combat tasks and doesn't really provide a specific answer. But you need to talk to him to learn how to find the other constellations, which is only locked behind talking to him since the developers don't like me. The college didn't even have the courtesy of being super funny. There were a couple bits I liked, like the hallway that's so boring you literally skip it when you enter the building, but most of it is college or nerd-based humor, and I am not a nerd or a college, so they mostly fall flat on me. Maybe if I didn't drop out of school to chew on sticks and make YouTube videos, I would have liked it more, but as is, I was just really bored. I get the book, play a very confusing copy of God of War to uncurse it, and have a dream that maybe what I did at the college was important or something, but my mind was so glazed over from the over half an hour I spent on the spider challenge that I didn't care what the consequences of my actions were. I wake up and Charles has gone missing. Charles? Oh right, he was the handyman who asked me about which stores I wanted every night. Oh right, I got 2 more stores at, an instrument store where I got this nifty symbol and a bakery. Anyways, Charles has gone missing! He was last seen going to the swamp so we could look for something giving our artifact scanner interference and hasn't been seen since. Jessica gives us a sponge that vaguely looks like a map for the swamp and warns us about Gatormen. Arriving at the swamp and we're ambushed by Poindexter, who kicks my ass and scribbles something on my forehead. Probably one of those cool S's I can never figure out how to draw, but whatever it is, it's lowered my stats for a while. I discover a small shack in the swamp and follow some tracks to a nearby cave where these guys are hiding from Gatormen who took their beer, so I trick the Gatormen to thinking it'll make them weaker. Stupid Gatormen. Beer only makes me weaker. Wandering around the swamp has me tangling with random Gatormen while slowly finding where Charles went, until I got bored and go see if the mob boss needs me to do anything. I regret getting bored though, because he sends me back to the college to do a meat laundering scheme, which actually didn't take long, so I go looking for more trouble. Back at the newspaper office, I find a manhole in an underground fisherman fighting club. I know the first 2 rules are to not talk about the club and to not talk about the club, but to me, if it's 2 rules in a row, they cancel out. I obviously win the rigged match of 2v1, then I kinda just wander around Ocean City and the college for 20 minutes until I remember that Charles is missing! So then I detour to help fix an airplane in the swamp instead. I brute force puzzle that requires something I simply do not have, a basic understanding of math. Then I get back on track to find Charles by breaking into the Gatorman Fortress. I then get back off track when I realize I am not strong enough to take the fortress on, so one last detour to a not haunted house to find some random keys. Boy, am I sure glad that the ghosts aren't in here, and I'm in here, and Charles is over there, and I'm here, and my only question is, where are the keys? Through the power of collecting random items, I get strong enough to take on the Gatorman, but only the first pack because I tricked the rest into going away with the promise of food. I find Charles locked up and he tells me the Gator King has the key, so we chase him down to the basement, and after a series of traps I narrowly dodge, Molly and I square up to fight his Goliath. Well, fighting a giant Goliath wasn't specifically on my to-do list anyway, so I hightail it out of there with Charles. It also turns out the key was the cursed object all along, and it has the power to unlock any door. Now, I have been vigilant to uncurse every object as soon as I can, but there's this bank near the antique store that has locks I can't open until I get my stats up higher, and I should probably make sure Jessica is right about the key being able to unlock any lock. Holy shit, I just broke into a bank! And I only got 19 meat out of it. Worth it. The Uncursing Dream is about a murder mystery, which I felt smart about solving until the game made it seem like I was always going to be right and that I needed to be intentionally wrong, so kinda took the wind out of my sails there. The next store I pick is a hat store, and I hang up the fridge I stole from the Gators. And then I have a dream where I'm not Kreisel, but I'm actually the president. The lady president. Don't get your hopes up for Lincoln again like I did. To summarize it in exactly 43 words, she tricked the public with empty promises, manipulated events to make the dam bigger, investigated the weirdness at the college, gave the Gatormen their weird underground lair, and has been drilling for oil for some nefarious scheme, all while her hair gets spikier. I wake up no longer the president and get told by Jessica to check out some nearby farms for a haunted sickle and get caught up doing busy work for the random old folk. Great County is a lot weirder than the rest of the game, and by that I mean it leans into the cosmic horror bits a lot more. You've got a house full of wormholes, giant worms that make holes, and a whole bunch of places to worm your way into. For the highlights, there was this bean factory that I couldn't save because nobody I talked to knew how to handle beans. A house near the road that genuinely scared me a bit, but that's one of the few things I don't want to directly spoil why. This well that I threw a bunch of stuff down despite the sign telling me not to, and once I helped a few of the townsfolk, I find Jasper, the guy Jessica said I should talk to find the sickle. He says we're gonna break into some oil drilling operation and blow it up. Oil drilling. Why does that sound familiar? America. So we trick the guard at the front gate, crack safe, light a fuse, and blammo, we're in. Now, Jasper does admit he didn't plan as far ahead as finding a secret room full of shadow demons and test tubes, but I came prepared. Look, I'm wearing a spooky hat so I can convince this old oil baron to let me blow up his stuff. Right before the place goes up in smoke, I snag the sickle and we all hightail it out of there, with Jasper bequeathing his shades to me. I'm sorry. I've never been bequeathed before. Uncursing the sickle has us enter a dream of us as some teenage girl being stalked by a scarecrow, only this scarecrow refers to us as Kreisel. Ah well, I failed the curse, let me try again. This is new. Yeah, this uncursing session requires you to cycle through all the previous uncursing dreams in an attempt to figure out a way to stop the Scarecrow, who was probably sent here by Poindexter. I talked to Old Man Time from when I was a dinosaur, and he helps me realize that the only thing stronger than a sickle is a lawnmower, so we hop through all the dreams to find parts to build one. This part of the game would have been really interesting if the way you swap between dreams wasn't annoying and random. Even if you think you know which dream would have the part you need or the person to talk to, whenever the Scarecrow kills you, you're sent to a completely random dream, which doesn't sound too bad until you're stuck in a cycle of going back and forth between the same 2 or 3 for a whole minute. That one fact genuinely kills the pace of this fun puzzle, and very slightly stains what would otherwise be a fun little trip down memory lane of all the previous curses for the final curse. We finish it, get a hardware store set up, and Jessica says there's going to be something big for us to do tomorrow, so we go to sleep and have the easiest to explain dream so far. We're screwed. Monsters, shadows, a clock with time running out, Madam President being mad I'm pissed, and the scariest part of all is when we wake up to an IRS statement on our door. We need to go pay our taxes to the shadow government, and Jessica tells us that something big was spun on the scanner in Government Valley, which is where we need to go. Look, I hate the government, shadow or otherwise, let's get this over with. I go file my forms in the American way, I find the correct lettering and numbering, get it folded, get it stapled, kill the guy who singes them because he was pissing me off, then get it notarized, which leads us to the obviously not a trap giant mouth in the wall. I just know that someone somewhere is very happy with this existing as a concept. Through the mouth, we find Poindexter, and using the power of my bequeathed shades and jazz, I beat him up in his first form. Then when his second form emerges and the actual combat starts, I just stack a ton of poison on him and win before I can even see what he does. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I got a creepy doll companion while I was in the valley. She makes stuff bleed. Upon defeating Poindexter, I am scrubbed clean of his marker from about 2 script pages ago and the key to the Black House, which I'm going to make a very educated guess and say is just the evil shadow version of the White House. I'm so fucking smart. We get in and finally find Uncle Murray. Mission accomplished. Except he says no, mission not accomplished. We still gotta stop the president. And to do so, we need to go destroy these big towers around the valley. Now, there probably was some actual puzzle to solve for each one, but I found using my fists, my head, and my teeth were all adequate. Destroying the towers lets us enter the Black House and encounter the president. She wants to use her portal to summon the Emperor of Shadows and use his power to rule the world, but old Uncle Murray says he can make a bomb that'll blow up the portal frame. But to allow him to do that, we need to push the president into the portal and deal with whatever or whoever is on the other side. That whatever or whoever happens to be a cosmic being made of eyes and mouths. Again, someone somewhere is very happy about this, and that makes me sad. I attempt to smooth talk to it, no dice. I try to smooth talk to the president, even less dice, so the only option left is to fight it. With the help of Molly, Gabby, and the plant dog, we square up against the monster and get our asses handed to us. To be fair, it's only because it's immune to all elemental and poison attacks, which have been my primary fighting style. And the game ends here, with the entity taking over the world. We see a quick montage of all the places I had been to being consumed by the void, and credits. Now, obviously that was the bad ending. If you do more of the optional stuff and buff up more, you can certainly beat the Emperor, and any other YouTuber probably would do that for their video. But I don't know. I personally think getting fucked up by the Demon Lord after failing to smooth talk to it is actually an end befitting the likes of Chrysal. Plus, it doubles as a call to action for you guys to play the game yourself and get the good ending instead. Wink, 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 wink. I'm not sponsored. This is just a good game. Shadows Over Loathing is genuinely a big step up from West of Loathing to me, and works as a really good comedy adventure role-playing game. The writing is amazing, especially the humor. It's not always laugh out loud funny, you're not going to be doubled over in your chair at every punchline, but it's also fun and charming in a way that had me genuinely smiling throughout 99% of the adventure, or chuckling at all the little dialogue exchanges. Even in the parts that dragged, like the college and the IRS, I could still enjoy the little quirks of the world and the characters, because Asymmetric Productions knows how to make an engrossing and interesting world out of stick figures. If you're a hardcore RPG fan who likes big numbers and deep enriching lore, this probably isn't going to entice you as much as an Octopath or a fantasy that is final, but if you want an entry-level role-playing game that has wonderfully cheesy writing, a simple but effective art direction, and may I say again, amazing soundtrack, then I totally recommend diving into the world of Shadows Over Loathing. And hey, if nothing else, at least there were no more ghosts. Ah!